WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively into football season around here. And, of course, we'll be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour on Friday at Cooper's North. Looking forward to seeing everybody up there behind Mays Chapel and Timonium. I'm looking forward to the gumbo. Make sure you tell Patrick that. And, it should always be St. Patrick's Day at Cooper's North, but it's not. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. I'll have some Maryland Lottery scratch-offs, Ravens scratch-offs to give away. The $2 variety. We'll be doing that on Friday from 2 until 5, along with our friends from Goodwill, Window Nation, and, of course, Restaurant Association of Maryland. It is Restaurant Week. I've been talking about it for 3 months. Get out, eat, get fat, eat away the blues, the purple blues. Luke Jones joins us now. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. He was at the game on Sunday firing questions to John Harbaugh in the aftermath of what, dude, you and I have made that walk down a few times over the course of years with surprising endings and sudden thuds and made field goals and missed field goals and all sorts of weird officiating, like all of that, right? This was a whole different kind of like weird beatdown, and I guess the silence of not only that, first time in the locker room in a long time for reporters. I saw Lamar in there. It looks like they added the disco lights. Looks like the United Terminal out at O'Hare in the locker room, but somber, right? Like, I mean, this is a jarring defeat to a team that thought they could win 13 or 14 games this year and just literally gave one away.
Yeah, I think shell-shocked would be the word that I would use in just the sense that, I mean, it went so well for 3 quarters. You're up 3 touchdowns. Lamar is on his way to be an AFC Offensive Player of the Week, right? Before Tua throws 6 touchdowns, and, well, I assume he's going to be Offensive Player of the Week. But it's one of those games where, as we said, I think you need to have the proper balance between reacting to it, because you can't just brush off blowing a 21-point lead in the fashion in which they did it on Sunday, while also recognizing it is one game. It's week 2. They are dealing with some injuries, which we can talk about the big picture ramifications of that and everything they thought they had done to combat that, and yet they're still losing guys. And Stephen Means goes down, and Devin Duvernay has a concussion, which, isn't something that you think of in the same terms as far as off-season training program and things of that nature. I mean, injuries are going to still occur, but you're still waiting on J.K. Dobbins. You didn't have Brandon Stevens on Sunday. You're still waiting on Ronnie Stanley. Marlon Humphrey was in and out of the lineup in the second half of Sunday's game. So, Marcus Peters played for the first time in a real game since the playoff loss at Buffalo. Not 20 months ago at this point. So, it really is
injuries here at this time, right? Like, and this isn't. It's not ideal after week 2. Whether you're 2-0 or you can't be 3-0 after 2 weeks, it wouldn't matter where they are. Yeah. It matters where they're going, and it's less than encouraging, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, right? Like, I don't know where Ojabo is or any of these guys down the line are, but they're going to lose other players. Other players are going to get hurt. We saw Means get caught. I mean, it's the league, right? But when you can't get the horses to the course on Sunday, it changes the complexion of everything, and it changes the hope. Dude, I remember 2 years ago in the middle of the plague, we're not at games, right? Stanley goes down in that game. I turned to my wife. I'm watching it on TV because I don't watch a lot of games on TV over the course of my life. I turned to her. I'm like, the season's over if he's down. And that's how I felt about it at that moment. At that moment, I felt like they can't win without him. I mean, not 10 weeks in a row, they're not going to win without him. And now, flash forward almost 2 years later, we're looking up. And if you would have told me Patrick McCary is playing left tackle against the Dolphins in week 2, I'd say, who's running the team?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. And Stanley's injury situation is on the more extreme side. You typically don't see someone that's going to be missing the better part of 2 seasons. Still some question. I mean, he's been practicing for a couple of weeks now, but he still hasn't practiced back-to-back days. So is he going to be ready for week 3? Is it going to be week 4? I don't know. I'm kind of done I sound like John Harbaugh saying this, but I'm kind of out of the predicting injury return timetables.
Point with all of this in August and the whole off season is getting these guys ready to play, and we're now like into the season, and they've either misled us, misled themselves, because what's out there right now does make me give not McDonald and Roman a hall pass in any of this, but it's not best in class. It's not above the bar, as John Harbaugh would say, and it's not the look that they spent 8 months trying to put together. This isn't good that every week all of you, Zrebeck, Hensley, are all on your, 10:30, 11 in the morning trying to piece together who's going to play the back end of the secondary. And then at 4:15, go in and look at John Harbaugh and have him try to figure out, because these are third string guys. This is not ideal in any way. And this is how things go the wrong way with health. I'm talking about. This is where they had the whole off season to talk about last year's bad health. And out of the gate, it's Monday. They're 1-1, and we're talking about bad health.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel a little deja vu-ish. It feels a little, here we go again. There's no question about that. And again, and I'm not suggesting that you were saying it either, but I can't excuse the secondary that still had some legitimate players on the back end on Sunday. It's not as this wasn't the Cincinnati game from last year, day after Christmas. Everyone's out. Guys had, Chuck Clark had COVID, where they had already lost Elliott. They had already lost Marlon Humphrey at that point. That Peters was long gone. Anthony Averett got hurt early in that game. This wasn't that extreme, but it still wasn't your full assortment of players. And on a very simplistic level, Ronnie Stanley, the Ravens gave a bunch of money, a ton of money to, and he's played one whole game and a half of another since then, and we're coming up on close to 2 years since that happened. So again,
the guy's collected $40 million, more than that.
You look at the guarantees of the first couple of years, it's a ton, right? So that hurts. You can talk about next man ups all you want, but when you're talking about your highest paid players, this is why we talked about it at the end of last year. I had a tough time taking it seriously. It's why I was against firing Wink Martindale, quite frankly, because I looked at the defense and thought, what did you really expect? So that aside, that's not to say that this injury situation is going to copy what happened last year. The difference here is they got Marcus Peters back on Sunday. They presumably are going to get Ronnie Stanley back. Now, the question of what version of Ronnie Stanley that is remains to be seen. Same with J.K. Dobbins, but Tyus Bowser will be back. David Ojabo, we think, should be able to help them a little bit the second half of the season. That's one reason he was available in the second round. He would have been a first-round pick had he been healthy. So, you look at it through that lens, but at the same time, we're 2 games into this thing, and they've already lost Jawan James, who was going to be your left tackle whenever Stanley was right. He's done for the year. They lost Kyle Fuller, who was going to be either their number 3 or their number 4 corner. He's done for the year. Stephen Means suffered an apparent serious injury on Sunday. And, beyond those, you're dealing with the week-to-week type stuff, not having Brandon Stevens on Sunday, Marlon Humphrey being in and out of the lineup. Marcus Peters is back, but he wasn't ready for 100% of the snaps yet. So, yeah, you're relying on different guys. And as you mentioned, I love Patrick McCary. He's a fantastic story. Former rookie free agent. Ravens extended him last year. He started a game at his 4th different offensive line position in his first 4 years of his career. That's crazy. He inevitably will start at left guard at some point because that's hardly a settled position either. So that's a great story. At the same time, you don't want that to be your plan A or your plan B. They're already on the plan C, hoping that plan A comes back. But until we see what Stanley looks like, until he's practicing every day fully, that's still kind of one of those where you're just kind of waiting and trying not to have too high expectations. But
I'm not a true believer. Are you?
I'm a believer that
he's going to be out on the field.
I think he's going to play.
Quarterback and play.
I think he's going to play. But I certainly have no idea if he's going to play anything like the $100 million left tackle they paid him to be 2 years ago. I have no idea if he's going to be the 2019 All-Pro selection that he was. I have no idea about that. I think he's going to play.
We have no idea about that with Peters, Boyle. Sure. We can just go down the line with these guys. Meanwhile, Bateman looks good, and meanwhile, Andrews is
right.
And
this is where we've spent the better part of 3 conversations now, 3 pieces now, talking about what went wrong. A lot goes wrong when you blow a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter, right? It is week 3. Everyone else in the AFC North did lose. The Bengals, the defending AFC North champions, the defending conference champion, are 0-2 and their offense does not look good. And all they talked about in the offseason was what? Protecting Joe Burrow at all costs. And they made a bunch of moves with their offensive line, and it looks very similar to what we've seen the last couple of years there. So, Cleveland, say what you want about Jacoby Brissett and the Deshaun Watson situation. They had a 2-score lead with just a couple minutes to go on Sunday, and Joe Flacco, doing what he used to do against the Browns back in the day, leads the Jets to an improbable comeback. And you look at Pittsburgh, and everyone was ready to write New England off, which is notable with the Ravens going to Foxborough. But Pittsburgh trying to figure out what they're going to look like. No TJ Watt for the time being, and trying to figure out their offense. And so this is a really messy division right now. So that's where the Ravens, you do take some solace in saying, all right, Sunday's fourth quarter was awful. It was an absolute nightmare. It was a collapse. It was a cluster, whatever description you want to give it. They're 1-1. They played a good game against the Jets in week 1. Week 2, first 3 quarters, they gave up yardage, but their defense had forced turnovers. They had only given up 14 points. It's fine, right? I mean, nothing to panic over. So you have to, as best you can, make the corrections, but also realize the sky isn't falling, because it's not. As much as you and I have written about it and wondering how they're going to respond, wondering what their identity is, everything is in front of them. But you don't want to give games away, because everything that happens now still has an impact on where you might fall come January. I mean, this game could be the difference between playing a second-round home game compared to going on the road. So that's where it's disappointing. But there's plenty to still really love about this team, beginning with, oh yeah, you have Lamar Jackson, and Sunday notwithstanding, that's proven to be a very, very much a winning proposition for the Baltimore Ravens since he took over in 2018. So you dust yourself off, you make the corrections, you hope some of these guys get back from injury. Marcus Peters returned on Sunday. Again, that's something that should be celebrated, knowing what he's capable of doing, even if he's going to need some time to knock the rust off. But this team still has a lot going for it. But yeah, they've got their problems they need to address and improve, because certainly you don't want to have another scenario like what we saw on Sunday repeating when you're going up against a team like Buffalo, or you're going up against the Bengals in a few weeks. I mean, just can't have that. And John Harbaugh and the staff knows it. These players know it, and it'll be up to them now to make the corrections and turn the page ahead of Sunday's meeting with the Patriots in Foxborough.
Luke Jones is our guest. You can find him at Baltimore Luke, and of course at AM 1570. He'll be in Owings Mills all week long. We'll have a little soliloquy for the Orioles before it's all over with here, as their season sort of winds down. A wonderful, incredible year, but now we turn our hopes and our attentions to the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the Baltimore sports scene, the Ravens, and saying, all right, so what's the real damage when I'm watching Joe Flacco getting all hoppity pop in the locker room and smiling ear to ear and texting me in the middle of the night and like all of that. Joe Douglas as well, beating up on the Browns, watching the Bengals fold up tent, down in under God's light in Texas, and the division, and Steelers lose to the Patriots, and we're going to see them this week, and we'll find out. It's not the big bad Patriots. It's not Tom Brady, but you still got a game plan around Bill Belichick without a secondary and without an offensive line, as we've been discussing here. We'll be discussing all week long. But the Billick once said, it's all sitting there. It is all sort of sitting there, right? I mean, Kansas City, Buffalo, the big bad wolf, whoever the perception would be this week is the best team in the league. I mean, Tom Brady's at 2-0. They didn't score a point in the first half, right? So he's got all sorts of ish going on off the field as well. The league's unsettled, and I would say through 2 weeks, it feels like preseason football, because it feels like it's been very choppy.
It has been lots of unexpected results. I mean, sticking in the AFC, I mean, look at Indianapolis. I mean, who saw that coming? And look, I wasn't a big fan of the Matt Ryan acquisition. I think Matt Ryan is what the kids say, washed for the most part, but you get shut out by Jacksonville, and look, they dumped Carson Wentz after what happened in the regular season finale last year, and you're thinking, okay, well, Matt Ryan will be better, and they've got Jonathan Taylor, and they should have a good defense. You lose 24-0 to the Jags, really? Even if I'm going to buy Jacksonville's better than they were under Urban Meyer, which it couldn't be any worse. So not exactly going out on a limb there. But yeah, you see these weird results, and you see these comebacks and these unusual outcomes. I mean, again, it was as you mentioned with Tampa Bay and New Orleans, 3-3 going into the fourth quarter. I mean, just a very odd ball game. How about the New York Giants? We've spent so much time talking about the Ravens defense and Mike McDonald and the fourth quarter collapse. Wink Martindale doing a pretty good job with that group so far, considering they've had some guys that have been unavailable. So, interesting to see that, and just the Giants being 2-0 in general. So, you mentioned New England. I have no idea with them. I don't think they're that good. I don't think they're necessarily terrible either. And, winning in Pittsburgh kind of reinforces that. You just go down the list and, you see some strange things that happen. I think the key here, and, I'll use the 49ers as an example here. They lose Trey Lance to an unfortunate, broken ankle. And, at least they have Jimmy Garoppolo to go back on. But that's really the only thing that really makes you say, all right, this alters the direction of the season. When you lose your quarterback, that early on, and maybe it works out for the 49ers. Who knows? I'm not saying Trey Lance is going to be the next big star in the NFL, but anything short of that kind of worst case catastrophic injury, you're looking at your team, whether it's the Ravens, any of these teams, even these 0-2 teams at this point, season's not over. Certainly there are things to work on. Certainly there's some things that creep up that you're not expecting. Sometimes there are pleasant surprises, and we saw that with Devin Duvernay in week one. And oh, by the way, he returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown on Sunday. We haven't even mentioned that and the excitement of that as a way to start a home opener with a bang. But you just go through and you take stock. These first two games are snapshots. They're important snapshots. They're important data points. You only have 17 data points over the course of an NFL regular season as it pertains to your team, but still a lot of football to go. And for all the hand-wringing, all the frustration, all the four-letter words that were uttered by Ravens fans on Sunday and probably Monday and Tuesday, thinking about what happened in the fourth quarter, to your point, what Brian Billick used to always say, it's all sitting right there, and nothing is lost at this point in time. Just a missed opportunity to be 2-0 rather than sitting there at 1-1 right now.
Well, Steelers and the Browns Thursday night, right? Somebody's going to lose, right?
Sure. Yeah. Again, the rest of this division.
It's the Browns, I think, but I don't know. I mean, I found myself liking that the Cowboys won on Sunday because they beat the Bengals, and I'm like, yeah, it does feel like a 10-11 win division, right? This isn't a 14-win division.
No,
not this division.
I never thought that. I mean, I picked the Ravens to win the division, and I had them at 11-6. I had Cincinnati at 10-7. I think Pittsburgh and Cleveland are going to be more around 500. Probably a game or two below 500. I still think the Browns have a good roster, even with their quarterback situation. But they're not going to. They're not going to be good enough to win 9 or 10 games. I don't think anything close to that, probably. So I think it's the Ravens and the Bengals. And if we're just going to gauge it on that, and I'm not going to change my predictions after 2 weeks, assuming there's no catastrophic injury, then I still take the Ravens. Well, Ravens are 1-1. Bengals are 0-2. There you go, right? I mean, even the math supports it. So that's where, again, exhale, take a deep breath. Yeah, they need to run the ball better. And yeah, their defense needs to be way better than what we saw on Sunday. That's Captain Obvious. You don't have to be a Greg Cosell to assess that, but there's still plenty to like, and there's still plenty of time to make corrections. And oh yeah, there are still some players who are going to be returning to the mix. What they look like, yeah, that remains to be seen, but there are reinforcements coming. And even though the Ravens still dealing with some injuries, not ready to just say, oh, this is going to be a repeat of last year, because they haven't lost those types of players just yet, even if certainly you'd rather not have lost Kyle Fuller and Jawan James and Stephen Means and go down the list of some of the guys that are dealing with some more short-term issues right now.
It's Boston week around here, Luke. I like talking to Boston sports writers through all of this. So we'll get a little Red Sox update. I'm sure some Celtics and Bruins history, as well as a current state of all things Coach Belichick this week and the hoodie, updating on that, as well as the Tom Brady sweepstakes. My wife's family gets involved this week, so it's usually interesting. Ravens Patriots, we've been up and down this road before. Luke will be out in Owings Mills all week long. I will be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. We have some Ravens scratch-offs to give away on Friday at Cooper's North. Also brought to you by our friends at Goodwill. We had Lisa Raciniak on last week talking about my rock and roll belt buckles again, as well as our friends at Window Nation, 866-90-NATION. We've been talking about the sort of the back to football, back to school specials going on. You buy two, you get two free. That's been going on for a long time over there. Take advantage of that at Window Nation. And of course, the Restaurant Association of Maryland. It is Restaurant Week. I've been talking about it all summer. 31 crab cakes, 31 days, 31 years. Get out, take advantage of it. Support some local businesses this week. Small local businesses like this one right here. Luke can be found on the interweb. I'm similarly all over the place. You might even find me on the lawn at the New Water Show down in Merriweather before the week's over as well. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, continuing our 26th year of civic therapy in the aftermath of a purple defeat. We are BaltimorePositive.com. Stay with us.